What's going on, everybody? I'd like to announce the beginning of my podcast that I'm starting with a few friends of mine, where we are going to be discussing, well, first of all, it's called the Gamer's Point of View Podcast, if you didn't catch that by the beginning of the video, the beginning section there. We're going to be discussing a lot of different games and real-world issues, things that we're interested in, things that we want to talk about. We're going to start off this Thursday. It will be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to run for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending on, the conversation, the quality of what's going on, and how we feel about the interaction between each other and the subject we're talking about. If we feel like it's, we want to take it a little bit longer, or if it's not that good, we'll kind of cut it a little short. We're starting off this Thursday with The Last of Us Part 2 and the controversy surrounding that, our thoughts on the game. Did we like it? Did we not like it? How much of it have we beaten? Are we playing through it again? There's a lot of people talking about this game. Some people haven't even bought the game yet, and they're kind of hating on it or judging it based on other people's reviews and other people's thoughts. And so we're trying to discuss some of that too and cover some of that. A lot of things, just like part 1, there's a lot of things to talk about with part 2. Other games that we're definitely planning on covering are GTA Online and Destiny 2, possibly The Division, or The Division 2, like the whole series basically. Some real world things that we're going to talk about over at different episodes. Each episode will be based on only one subject. This week is going to be The Last of Us, and we're not going to talk about anything else. Part 2. We're going to talk about the George Floyd protests and the rioting and all that, the racial problems that are happening in the country and the police violence and everything. We'll have an episode on the coronavirus, on COVID-19, on the quarantine and the wearing masks and social distancing and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have an episode on dead video game series that we want to see return. Some of them that come to mind for me are like the Infamous series, obviously for my name, the Dead Space series, Max Payne series, games that I would like to see either get sequels or get rebooted like in the way that God of War did, where it still pays respect to the past and everything like that. We're going to talk about SJW cancel culture. We're going to talk about gun violence, mass shootings, whether or not people think that people should be able to own guns, and whether they should have high-capacity magazines or not. All these different things, all the different things that surround guns and our ownership of them and how people behave with them. Global warming and pollution and our need to eventually leave this planet and colonize other worlds so that we can have the survival of the species, because this planet does have an expiration date, but we don't need to hurry it along. We need to take care of the planet, so we'll have an episode talking about that kind of stuff. We're going to do an episode on our favorite games, or it's like top 5 favorite games that we've ever played. We'll go into a little bit of detail with each game, each person with their list on, what their games are, why they feel the way they do about them, talk a little bit about them. We're going to do an episode on the worst games that we've ever played, the worst game series in our opinions, ones that we picked up and we feel like we would never pick up again, and after we put them down and we feel ripped off by them or wronged by them or whatever. We're going to talk about cross-play and cross-platform gaming, how we feel about that, if we like the idea or we're against it or indifferent, whatever. We're also going to get into some political discussions, how we feel about Democratic, Republican, Independent, the whole system in our country here, and maybe even talking about how it's done in other countries, and if we're for it, if we're against it, if we're against it, what kind of changes we feel, could happen. And we're going to probably talk about another episode, maybe like economic things in the country, the dissidence between the rich and the poor, and how most of the wealth is concentrated in the top 10% of the country, of the population and everything, and get into that a little. And we're going to talk about other games as well, and but primarily, I think, as far as the video games are concerned, at least for the short-term future, it'll be primarily focusing on GTA Online and Destiny 2 when we do talk about games. And as much, you know, we might get an episode or 3 maybe at the most out of The Last of Us Part 2, depending on if they have DLC, if they have updates. But I've heard there is no plans right now for any DLC for it, so we'll see on that. But yeah, that's what's going on. That's what this podcast is going to be about. I hope everybody on my channel checks it out. I hope I can get some people from my TikTok over, and you know, some of my friends that I are in my clans on GTA and Destiny and everything will give us a watch, check us out, see how you like the conversation. You can be able to join in the live chat and, you know, ask us questions. We won't get to your questions right away. The way we're going to do it is we're going to have our back and forth, our discussion, and then I'll scroll up to the top of the chat and start looking at for questions, and maybe the last 15 minutes, half an hour of the podcast, we'll try to answer some questions that people had in the chat and see you can have a little back and forth with us that way. So, you know, let me know down in the comments if you've got any ideas for subjects or games you'd like to see us cover. At the current time, I can't afford to go out and get a lot of games right now to cover, so that's one of the reasons why the breadth of the games we're going to cover is going to be slow, like low at the beginning. You know, not going to cover too many. Just the ones I primarily play right now and that I own right now. And let me know down in the comments how you feel about The Last of Us. Have you played Part 1? Have you played Part 2? Have you heard about the controversy with Part 2? Do you have strong feelings about it one way or another? You know, and are you trying to actively get people to buy it and like it, or are you actively trying to get people to hate it and get people to not buy it? You know, how strong are your feelings one way or another? That's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for listening and watching any of my content, as always. And I hope you all tune in on Thursday and come check out the podcast.
It's okay. I got him.
Take care, guys.
You sure? Yeah. All right. About what we were talking about earlier. I can't say I'd have done different. I'll take it to the grave if I have to. I'll see you later, Doc.